generations to come.
Welcome to another edition of the TDN Writers Room podcast. My name is Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the TDN and also the co-host of the Down the Stretch radio show on SiriusXM Radio.
Hi, I'm Randy Moss with NBC Sports and the Buyer Speed Figure team.
Zoe Cadman here with First Racing and First TV. Randy, where can I get a quarter pole like that? You have one in your office. I've got a wooden stick pony behind me, and you have a fabulous looking quarter pole.
They're at Saratoga. I saw them all over town at Saratoga. And then I came back home and decided, I got to have one of those. And there's a company, I think they're based in Saratoga, that actually makes them. Yeah.
Oh, I have to look it up. Yeah. Fabulous. Cool. I need one. Maybe
I'll take one of those. Dad Stilks hanging next to it. He owned one horse before I was born. They wound up giving it away after 2 lifetime stars. An unbelievably slow horse. But it almost looks like a Japanese kind of theme, doesn't it?
Yeah, very cool.
Well, Randy, we know what to get Zoe for Christmas now, one on the quarter pole. There you go.
I'll add it to the list.
Okay. So, guys, it's that time of year. So much to talk about and so much fun talking about the 3-year-olds and the 3-year-old fillies on the way to the Kentucky Derby or the Kentucky Oaks. So why don't we start with the biggest race of the week last week, which was Louisiana Derby, won by Tiztastic, who ran a 95 buyer. He was coming off kind of a lackluster performance for Steve Asmussen, where he is 5th, beaten 6.5 lengths in the Rebel. But in a way, his ascension into this race and into the winner's circle reminded me a little bit of what Magnitude did. Now, Magnitude was much more impressive than Tiztastic and ran fast. The same thing. The horse was just plunking along, ran 6 in the Lecomte. All of a sudden, he looked like Seattle Slew, winning the Risen Star. So, Tiztastic is one of those horses that, be in that 14, 15 to 1 range, I imagine, in the Derby. Zoe, do you see him as a major contender?
I wish I could say I did. I trust in Steve Asmussen. It was a decent race. The buyer speed figure was okay. Obviously, he's going to run again because he didn't run them off their feet. It's good to see Tiz the Law absolutely firing on all cylinders because he's from the first crop of Tiz the Law. Good luck to anyone trying to find a Tappet mare nowadays because it looks like they're going to be very few and far between of those. And if there are, you're going to have to pay a pretty penny for a Tappet mare. So, Wellbred Son of Tiz the Law, was it the most scintillating race I've ever watched? No. I was thinking that Chunk of Gold might have a good shot. Built ran a big race. Looks like he may be back to a 1-turn mile. Decent race. Not shocking, not fabulous, but not bad.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, he did like Magnitude. He took a step forward, although his step forward wasn't of the magnitude of Magnitude. And the reason he was in New Orleans to begin with was because of the lackluster race in the Rebel. The initial plan was with Ron Winchell and Coolmore, the owners, and Steve Asmussen, was to run him in the Rebel and then the Arkansas Derby. And he ran such a lackluster race in the Rebel for no apparent excuse. After he had trained very well earlier at the fairgrounds, they decided, well, heck, let's just take him back to the fairgrounds. Maybe he just doesn't like the track at Oaklawn. And they got him back to New Orleans, and he trained exceptionally well. Steve always thought that Tiztastic would be better as the distances progressively got longer. I haven't seen him in person. Steve says he is a big, gorgeous, big, beautiful horse. And so he was expecting an improved race. Am I going to say that, because we spent a lot of time with him on the phone, Jerry and I did before the race. Did he actually expect to win? I don't really think so. But he did expect an improved performance, and he definitely got it.
And how about, guys, Chunk of Gold purchased for $2,500. He now has run second in the Rebel and the Risen Star and the Louisiana Derby, has the points and will be in the starting gate for the Kentucky Derby, lining up against all those $1 million Bob Baffert horses and whatnot. I don't think he's good enough to win the Derby, but I love stories like this. $2,500, and he is in the Kentucky Derby field.
Fantastic story. A pin hooker in rural Kentucky actually bought him for $2,500, trained him for a while, was a friend of owner Terry Stevens. So went to Stevens, and Stevens is racing manager, and said, hey, this horse, you need to look at this horse. So they sold a half interest at that point to Stevens. And then after the horse broke his maiden first time out, Stevens bought the other half. That the horse at that point, before he even ran second in the Risen Star, was valued at around $200,000. So he made quite an escalation from a $2,500 yearling to his maiden win, and now look at him, he's in the Kentucky Derby. It would be a fantastic story.
Great Fairgrounds Oaks was the race warm-up for the Kentucky Oaks for the fillies. And we have an obvious favorite now for the Kentucky Derby in Good Cheer. And, she's something else. She's just like a machine to me. She doesn't run particularly fast. She got a 91 buyer. It's the first time she broke out of the 80s. And she doesn't, by the eye, by the visual, she doesn't look like a horse that is blowing anybody away. But then every time you look up at the finish or look up at the PP, she wins by 4 lengths, wins by 5 lengths. No one's touched her. Maybe Tenma in California, if she wins the Santa Anita Derby, could, vie for favoritism with her. But that's it. You just turn her on, send her out, and she does her thing, Zoe.
She's pretty amazing. 6 for 6. She's 2 for 2 this year. She, like you said, Bill, she's not the most brilliant to watch, but she gets it done each and every time. It's almost like when you see her coming down the lane, you're like, oh, she's going to eke out and win by half a length. And then all of a sudden, someone moves the finish line another 16th away and she wins by 5 or 6. Because that's what it looks like visually. You're like, oh, she's going to get there. But once she clears her competition, it's like she takes off. She's amazing. You can't fault her. You really can't.
It's kind of interesting to hear Brad Cox talk about her because, here's a guy who's got all of these $1 million, near $1 million, big, beautiful, strapping horses. And then there's this filly who's very ordinary looking. She's not big. She's not super strong looking. She's just pretty ordinary looking. And he never thought, really, that she would become a graded stakes winner. But every time he ran her, even before she ran, he would put exercise riders on her, okay? And let's say she goes out and she works a half in 49-3. And the exercise riders would come back and say, wow. And Brad would say, wow, what do you mean, wow? She worked in 49-3. What was wow about that? And they said, you can't explain it. There's just the way she moves. She's got a really, really good way of moving. And the jockeys have said that now, all the people that have breezed her in the morning. So there's obviously a lot more to her than just her looks. And she's certainly shown that so far in her racing career. But I agree with you, Bill. I mean, even on paper, other than the 1-1-1-1-1-1-1 in her record, the figures, the analytics don't necessarily blow anybody away. So, it'll be interesting to see if that's just an illusion and she just keeps winning like this and keeps stepping up her game as the competition gets tougher, or if maybe, the figures don't lie. It's going to be fascinating.
Who was the filly a few years ago? Oh, was it Phaser for Bob, who was the same kind of thing? Never ran a high number, but beat everyone in California. And I was all bullish. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care if she's beaten who she's beaten. It's fine. She'll be fine in the Oaks. Oh, couldn't find her.
Yeah. And in 2018, Monomoy Girl didn't have fantastic numbers either, as she made her way through the ranks at the fairgrounds and then in the Ashland. And then, of course, we know what Monomoy Girl wound up being. So.
And how about Ahava in her second lifetime start, finishing second in there for Sherry DeVoe. So she's somebody to watch down the line. Randy, I've been trying to find a favorite horse for you. You two Phils, retired. The
Senior Buscador is gone.
Senior Buscador. How about Touch Upon a Star?
Oh, man.
Louisiana bred, goes out and just demolishes the field in the New Orleans Classic for a 109 buyer, cost $15,000 at the sales. Sierra Leone was the big name in there, ran a pretty mediocre race, if you ask me. It was third, beaten 4.5 at odds of 3-10. Touch Upon a Star has gone from, to me, some horse that just wins a lot of Louisiana bred races to a horse that looks like you could put him in the starting gate in any kind of race and he'd give you a good run.
He'd give you a good run. And if he gets the same kind of trip that he got in New Orleans, I mean, on an easy, uncontested lead, coming off a 12.5 or 12.25 length demolition in a stakes race at Delta, he was really, really in sharp form. And it's just hard to beat a horse when you give him a good horse, when you give him that kind of an advantage. I'll take it one step further. If it's not Touch Upon a Star, My new favorite horse might be Star Guitar, his sire. We've talked about this before. I mean, I think the horse is like 22 years old. It's probably too old now for, for some big Kentucky breeding operation to sweep in and pay a lot of money to bring him to Kentucky. But my God, if this horse had stood in Kentucky all these years and had access to some blue-blooded mares to be bred to him, how good could he have been as a stallion? Because everything he throws seems to be just a runner. I mean, it's really cool to see the way this sire in Louisiana has really now kind of taken things to the next level. And I didn't think the race for Sierra Leone was that bad. Keep in mind, when he won the Breeders' Cup Classic, he had an incredible pace setup. He had 1.25 miles. Now he comes off a layoff. It's his first start of the year. He'd had a little issue leading up to this, a foot issue. So he'd missed a little bit of training time. 1.1 miles, no pace. And he still rallies to finish third. I think he gets a 103 Buyers. I thought it was a good start back for him, but he's not going to be one of these kind of horses that wins time after time after time. He's just too set up dependent with his running style.
It was nice to see him staying straight, which was the big story of last year, him lugging in. And Pratt just said he never really got into a rhythm. It looked like he might have been finding his rhythm late because he was gaining on the winner, Touch Upon a Star, and he did gallop out in front of him. I know the wire's there, and who cares about the gallop out, but I think he'll be fine next time out. Touch Upon a Star, though, what a cool horse. First Louisiana bred to win the Classic since 1996. Scott Scoundrel. I was there in 1996. I bet on Scott Scoundrel when he won. He paid $18. I'll never forget that. It was a very, very good race. And kudos to Jake Delhomme to put him in there. I believe we had him on this time last year. And he was talking about perhaps going in the Classic. And then he dodged and went in the Louisiana bred race. And he won for fun. So nice to see them, going in open company with him. And that was racehorse time. Anytime you go 1:10-3 over that track and you're on the lead, that's a solid 3/4 time to put up and finish like he did. So I'm not saying they gave it to him on the lead. He earned it. For sure he did.
We saw what a cool guy Jake Delhomme was when we had him on the podcast. And after this race, after the New Orleans Classic, when they interviewed him down in the winner's circle, oh my God, he was just so excited. He just came through. You could see it was really neat.
And Tim Thornton, what a great ride. The blue boots of Tim Thornton. I remember him I'm aging myself here, my God. 16-year-old kid sitting in the shed row at Hawthorne Racecourse, waiting to get legged up to just walk a horse around the shed row before he could ever ride. We were in Ricky Lindsay's barn. And he's been leading rider down in Louisiana, found a home down there, and he's done great. I'm really proud of him.
So let's turn our attention to Turfway Park, where the Jeff Ruby was the prep for the Randy, I heard you say this on NBC, and I totally agree with you. It's the Jeff Ruby Stakes. That just is what the name of it is. You can't, whatever. I got more important things to worry about than that. But it is the Jeff Ruby Stakes, if you really want to go by the way that we call races. And also, Randy, how do I say this without picking on you? But the Beyer figures on Final Gambit, as you well know, he was so far the slowest horse in the race. He's supposed to lose by 20 points. 20 lengths. I know that this is an inexact science, but how did the Beyer team look at this afterwards when a horse that was running in the 60s beat horses that were some horses even running in the 90s?
I thought his last race was a little bit better than the figure he wound up earning. But even if you gave him, 7 or 8 extra points of credit, 75, that's still not going to be enough to really bet him with any kind of confidence. And when you watched his races visually, he just looked like a horse that was struggling to put it all together. He would make a nice move, and then he would get to the leaders and he would kind of mess around and lug in and duck out and just wasn't focused and wrong lead, the whole thing. I mean, he just wasn't the kind of horse that really had caught on to everything that they asked him to do. But he definitely took a step forward in that department as well. Now, is he going to be, a contender on dirt in the Kentucky Derby? He's going to be 31, if not higher. So, but it was, Judd Mont, it was kind of cool to see the win.
And Not This Time, the 23rd graded stakes winner for Not This Time as well. So he is on a roll. Good race. A nice race. I'm going to start using nice because it's a word I hate. It was a nice race.
Now, Zoe, I'm surprised you missed the real story from the Jeff Ruby Stakes. Flying Mohawk, co-owned by Jason Worth.
Yeah, I did.
He's now in the Kentucky Derby. I assume he has enough points finishing second there. So you'll maybe get to meet your idol come Derby week at Churchill Downs.
That would be awesome. I'm sure Randy can facilitate that. Either him or Tom Brady. Tom would be first.
And they plan on running Flying Mohawk, even though they've never run on dirt before either. It's the way of the world now in the Kentucky Derby. Well, one more thing about the Jeff Ruby stakes. Jeff Ruby's lucky number, as we found out through a text message before the race, is 7. So the purse of the race was $777,000. There you go.
That's cool. The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland, which saw their September grad we just talked about, Tiztastic, take the Louisiana Derby this past weekend. With over $428 million in gross sales, the 2024 Keeneland September sale set a new industry benchmark as the highest grossing thoroughbred auction in history. That's a testament to the commitment of sellers, confidence in buyers, and the global trust in Keeneland as the premier marketplace for yearlings. The sale takes place this September the 8th through the 20th. Entry deadline is May the 1st.
Leslie's Rose, Sierra, Leon.
Mike, $5 million. Thank you.
Carl Spackler, a Mercy. She feels pretty. Hup!
Now, this week's Fastest Horse of the Week brought to you by Heartland, one of the fast sires at WinStar Farm. Talk about a pedigree. Heartland is by Justify and also a half-brother to Classic Empire, the Eclipse Award champion as a 2-year-old. Only one start for Heartland, but it was a doozy. He was a TDN Rising Star in that only race. He got a 90 Beyer speed figure. Covered the 5.5 furlongs in his debut, 103.20. That's faster than any 2-year-old at Del Mar and Saratoga on dirt at that distance in 2023. He was a $575,000 Keeneland September yearling. Heartland stands at WinStar for a fee of $10,000. Fastest horse of the week, we just talked about him. Touch Upon a Star, the son of Star Guitar, Beyer speed figure 109 in that race. That puts him way up there in 2-turn dirt Beyer category with horses like White Barrio and others. So it'll be interesting to see the next move that Jake Delhomme makes with his fast rising Louisiana bred veteran runner.
It's time now for the Gainesway Guest of the Week. We welcome in Damon Thayer, well-known person to people in horse racing, had a distinguished career in Kentucky politics, decided not to run a couple of years ago for re-election, and is now working as a senior advisor for the Thoroughbred Racing Initiative. And right now, as you might expect, his main goal is to keep decoupling from happening in Florida. Welcome, Damon. And Damon, you know politics a lot better than I do, but usually I don't always agree, obviously, with what state government, local government, or federal government does. But usually I understand why. I understand what's going on, what's the reasons. This, I just don't get it. How on earth can anybody in the Florida legislature be in favor of closing down this racetrack, closing down this industry so that a foreign company can build the 19th casino or whatever it is in Florida? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
It's a real head scratcher, Bill, and great to be with you guys. Thanks for having me on to give everyone an update on what's happening in Florida. And as you mentioned, I was in the Kentucky State Senate for 22 years, retired a few months ago, and I saw a lot of strange things. Lawmaking is like making sausage. Some of the ingredients and the process make you scratch your head, but in the end, usually a good result. But I've never seen a thing like this where a bill has such a head of steam with the entire industry opposed to it. And, I've been working for these guys for about 2 months now. And, trying to get to the motivations, it just basically, Belinda wants to sell Gulfstream Park. And, this is a fact. I'm not making a pejorative statement. She has contributed, Gulfstream Park has contributed over $300,000 in campaign contributions since the end of 2023 to Tallahassee politicians and their campaign committees. And for whatever reason, she got the House Budget Committee Chairman McClure, to be a big supporter of decoupling. And Representative Adam Anderson, who has part of Tampa Bay Downs in his district, to agree to sponsor the bill. And the only other thing we can find out is one of those guys is really good friends with Gulfstream Park's lobbyist. And, those two factors, the campaign contributions and the friendship, are the only the only motivation that we can find. And I'm a unique guy in the fact that I understand legislative lingo and horse racing lingo. I'm a terrible handicapper, but I know how to speak the language of both the horse racing side and the legislative side. So some of the inside is the House Budget Committee chairman wants it. And nobody wants to make the House Budget Committee chairman mad because he controls the line item appropriations in the budget. And believe me, every legislator, whether Republican or Democrat, wants to go home at the end of a session to do ribbon cuttings, groundbreakings, and check presentations on projects that they've been able to secure for their district. And in most cases at state government level, these are important things: water lines, sewer lines, roads, community colleges, things like that. But the best we can tell is nobody wants to make the budget committee chairman mad. And when we got in, we knew that the skids were greased in the House, but although we seem to have slowed it down a little bit. But our plan has always been on to defeat the bill in the Senate. And that's where we are right now. We had a really good week last week, but we're in a new week and we're almost to the halfway point of the Florida legislative session. And we're pouring it on. We're pushing this message that this is a $3.3 billion industry, and it has nearly 33,000 jobs. It's bigger than college athletics. It's as big as the ports and as on a similar footing as the citrus industry. And I'm a bit like you, Bill. I'm still just aghast that an industry like this would be under attack. And the odd thing is, you, Bill, and I, we don't agree much on politics. I'm an old school Reagan Republican, a little bit out of fashion in my own party, and I'm fighting Republicans who are pushing this bill that could absolutely devastate an industry. So we just keep pushing this message, and our focus is on the Senate right now. If we could get them to not even bring the bill up, we want to kill the bill, defeat the bill for this session, and that gives us the time to negotiate Florida's racing future, because we do know that legislators down there are willing to listen to ideas. We're gonna have to make changes to the statutes. I'll tell you this: I don't know that year-round racing in Florida is a long-term prospect with or without decoupling. So, we've got to look at the Breeders' Awards and the purse supplements for Florida breds and purse supplements from expanded gambling, which is happening both in Tampa with the Card Club and with the slots casino at Gulfstream Park. We're willing to look at all these things, but we're not going to negotiate with a gun to our head. And that's the situation we find ourselves in today.
So, Damon, with the power brokers, it sounds kind of lined up against you on this. It sounds like you might be swimming upstream. Are you doing this yourself in Tallahassee? How many people do you have working with you, and how much hope do you have that you can ultimately succeed in this?
Randy, that's a great question. I haven't even been to Tallahassee yet. I was supposed to go last week, but I came down with a bad case of vertigo, so getting on an airplane was a bad idea. But we've hired. So first of all, the Thoroughbred Racing Initiative Board is David O'Farrell, president, Jonathan Green from DJ Stable, vice president, and our board is Mark Cassie, Barry Eiselman, and Aaron Wellman. And I talk to them almost every day. We have Zoom updates at least once a week. But we have raised money from the industry in Florida and in Kentucky to help fund this effort. We've hired one of the top one of the top lobbying teams in Tallahassee. It's called Reuben Turnbull. Bill Rubin is the principal, extremely well connected. I work with him and his team. We have a PR firm that's doing some PR work for us in Tallahassee. And then all of the industry PR is Jenny Reese, who you all know, one of the top PR specialists in the business, an Eclipse Award winner from her time at the Courier Journal in Louisville. And she's doing all of our social media. We're on Facebook and Twitter, Thoroughbred Racing Initiative. And you can tell I'm old fashioned. I still call it Twitter. I mean, I still call the Commanders the Redskins. I still own a CD collection and a CD player. I'm very old fashioned. We have a website, Thoroughbred Racing Initiative, and we are working with the Gulfstream Horsemen, the newly formed Gulfstream Horsemen's Group, the Tampa HPPA, the OBS, Ocala Breeder Sales, and the FTBOA. We're sort of working collaboratively because that's what we found worked in Kentucky with the Kentucky Equine Education Project. This is very similar, except in 2021, we were trying to pass a bill to save horse racing. That would be the historical horse racing bill. In Florida, we're trying to defeat a bill to save horse racing. And then the other big difference is in 21, the tracks and the breeders and the owners and the horsemen and the jockeys were all on the same page. Where in this situation, we're clearly working against Gulfstream Park. So some similarities, some differences, but my mantra that I'm preaching to the industry is, I know people have bad blood from things that have happened in the past, but cooperation is better than extinction. That's what I said at my speech at the National HBA convention last month. The Arkansas breeders have asked me to come down and speak at their dinner Friday night before the Arkansas Derby, and I'm going to deliver the same message. Cooperation beats extinction, and the states where the industry has a good working relationship with their legislative body, those are the places where racing is going to survive and thrive. And so I'm sort of preaching that one state at a time, because there are places where racing is doing well. And if you look in every place, it's because they have a strong relationship with their legislature. Here in Kentucky, New York, Florida, Virginia, Arkansas, Indiana. I just saw some good news coming out of Minnesota yesterday. And I'm sure there are other examples, but those are just a few. That's where we're going to do well. And honestly, the industry thought it had a good relationship with the legislature, but then on January 2nd, when that press release came out about decoupling, the industry felt like it completely had the rug pulled out from underneath it. It kind of caught most everybody unawares because the Stronach Group cut a deal with the Old Horsemen's Group back in July, but they were sworn to secrecy, so nobody knew about it. It back to your original starter, Bill. This is the strangest situation I've ever seen. And I've been in the Kentucky legislature for 22 years and in horse racing my entire life. And I've seen a lot of strange things. So that's a really high bar to say that this is the strangest thing I've ever seen, right, at the intersection of horse racing and politics.
So Damon, the unanswered question of the many unanswered questions, suppose you win, the good guys win this, you're the good guys. Belinda Stronach has said, okay, you don't give me decoupling, I'm shutting the place down. And you guys can go to hell, and then I'll just sell the land. How serious a threat is that? And is there anything that could stop her from doing that?
Well, if she, first of all, I don't speak for First Racing or Belinda Stronach or Gulfstream Park. But they can threaten to shut the place down, but then they have to shut down the casino. I mean, they've got 500 slot machines. But by the way, under the law, they could put in 2,000 slot machines, and they've only been operating 500. But their average gaming revenue out of those machines is $39 million a year. So if they want to shut Gulfstream Park down, they got to shut down the money train that is their casino. And, under the current law, they have 2 racing licenses technically there, and they're required to run at least 80 days a year. And granted, they've been running 200. Look, the guys that I work for know that some adjustments probably need to be made in Florida racing law. And we're willing to come to the table and do it, but we're not going to do it right now when there's a gun to our head, when the Stronach Group is basically saying, take decoupling or else. 19 years ago, the Stronach Group cut a deal with the Horsemen that allowed them that slot machine casino at Gulfstream Park as long as they continued horse racing. And now the Stronach Group is trying to renege on that because for whatever reason, they want out of horse racing. I mean, it's pretty clear. They've shut down racetracks in Michigan, Oregon, Northern California. They've negotiated an out of Maryland. They clearly want out of Florida. And I think everybody knows that Santa Anita is next. Okay, fine. But if you want out, you want out. That's fine. But there are deals in place with horsemen who put on the show. Listen to me, Bill, sounding like a populist here. This is a strange world we're living in. But it's true. And, I'm an old racetrack management guy. I mean, you got to have the horsemen to put on the show. And, people feel like, that Gulfstream Park has gone back on a deal that they cut 19 years ago. And, we're ready to be collaborative, but we want the rest of this year to do it, not the rest of this month.
So when the Gulfstream people initially had the big meeting with the Horsemen that attracted so much controversy, and they offered I think it was a guaranteed 5 years of racing at Gulfstream if the Horsemen agreed to support decoupling. Has First Racing actually said anything publicly or privately about what it would do if the decoupling bill doesn't pass?
Well, they haven't said anything publicly. Last week in Tallahassee, the House version of the bill was up in its second committee, and the only person who spoke in favor of the bill was Representative Anderson, the sponsor. We had nearly 20 Floridians lined up to speak against the bill, including Belmont Stakes winning trainer Jenna Antonucci, who's been a terrific spokesman for this, Ocala Breeders Sales Company President Tom Ventura, and Ocala Stud General Manager and the President of TRI, David O'Farrell, our board members, Barry Eiselman and Mark Cassie, and many, many others to speak about the cataclysmic effect this bill would have on the industry. I can't say what they've said in private, but I mean, you can predict what it likely is that they've said. I don't think they can shut it down because under the law, they've got to run at least 80 days to have that casino. But so to your question, if our coalition wins and we defeat the bill this session, I mean, she can try to do whatever she wants, but she's going to, if she wants to play that hand while we're negotiating with, in good faith, maybe a future legislative package for the Florida racing industry, she's probably going to show the industry what she's really all about. So I would say it's not as easy for her just to shut it down as it would look.
Okay.
As it appears to on Twitter, on horse racing Twitter.
Let's play this forward like a decade, Damon. Let's suppose that you succeed in this, right? You succeed in preventing decoupling at Gulfstream Park. What do you see as the best case scenario for horse racing in South Florida at that point moving forward?
Well, I think it's going to be a lot like horse racing in America. We're in the middle of we might be in the beginning of a painful contraction. where there are fewer tracks. But in Florida, you're going to need a white knight to come in and buy Gulfstream Park and operate it as a racetrack. And I'm not sure that she would sell it as a racetrack. So the long-term future of Gulfstream Park is probably in question as a racetrack, even if we kill the decoupling bill. So let's talk about all the options, and there are half a dozen. There could be an expanded role for Tampa Bay Downs, which is a fine racetrack. One of my favorites, actually. My grandparents were snowbirds from Michigan. I'd visit them in the Tampa area in the winter, and my grandfather took me to Tampa Bay Downs. I was just there a couple of weeks ago. It's a great track. I was there on a Wednesday, and they had a really enthusiastic, large crowd. Some of the top horsemen in the country like to race there. The surfaces are good. Maybe there's an expanded role with higher purses for Tampa. Maybe the industry could work out a deal with John Bernetti Jr. to lease Hialeah. There are no barns there anymore, I'm told. But with all the training centers down there, Palmettos, Payson Park, Palm Beach Downs, plus the training centers in Ocala, you could probably do a harness racing model like the Meadowlands, where it's a ship-in facility, ship in and race. That's a possibility. I don't want people to get their hopes up. I'm not sure that the Hialeah option has a great degree of success possibility, but sure would be pretty cool. I'm told that the dirt and the turf courses would just need a little work, and the building, again, I haven't been there, but I'm told the building, which houses a casino, is still in decent shape, and the paddock and the courtyard and the fountains and the citation statue are still there. Some people think that racing at Palmettos is a possibility. I think that one is a real long shot, because when it was built, the local community signed covenants that said you cannot operate a live racetrack here. They don't want the traffic in and out, and I understand that the ingress egress would be a problem there for large crowds anyway. So then, maybe do you go north of Broward and Miami-Dade counties where the land is less expensive and build a new track? Or do you go to Ocala? Do you go to Ocala, where Adena Springs, which still owned by Frank Stronach, has barns and I'm told a nice dirt and turf tracks there. Classic Mile has a track. OBS has a nice synthetic surface. Is there winter racing at Tampa with maybe some shoulder meets in north of Miami or in Ocala? Is there going to be racing in the summertime, i.e. the old Calder dates? These questions are all up in the air, and I've talked to a lot of people over the last 6 to 8 weeks, and everybody has a different scenario, but it's going to take cooperation from Tallahassee, because the Seminole Indian tribes are very strong down there, and to get another casino license that would support a racetrack is going to be hard. In any state where the Indians have a lot, there's almost 40 casinos already in Florida, to your point, guys, earlier. Does Hallandale Beach really need another one when Hard Rock is a quick drive, down the road? So we're going to need legislative help to draft the future, what it looks like. And then we're going to need money. And, we're going to need investors. I'd love to, there are two organizations that have a lot of money in the bank in this business, Breeders' Cup and Jockey Club. And they're both supposed to be about the preservation of horse racing in America. Maybe they need to step up, put together a group on the NYRA model or the Keeneland model or some sort of nonprofit where a lot of the really wealthy people in this industry join together and figure out a solution that involves one or a combination of the options that I just discussed with you.
Damon, you've said that, and I've heard this from other people, that the hope is you'll have a lot more success in the Senate than you've had so far in the House. I want to take it one step further. Does anyone know where Governor DeSantis stands on this? And could he become a player in this eventually?
We've met with Governor DeSantis. We've met with the Attorney General. We've met with the Commissioner of Agriculture. They are all aware of the situation. They are all aware of the Canadian citizen who is attempting to shut down horse racing at Gulfstream Park and harm Florida jobs. I've been doing this a long time, Randy.
Invoking Canada right now might not be a bad strategy there, Damon.
Thank you.
With certain elements of America.
Thank you. I cannot. I have to protect the confidences of the gentleman I just mentioned, the governor, the attorney general, and the commissioner of agriculture. We were very happy that they took the time to meet with us, and they're very well aware of the situation. And, at the appropriate time, if we need to, we will circle back with them. I mean, if it passes, we're going to ask Governor DeSantis to veto it, but I hope it doesn't get to his desk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Damon, thanks so much for all that information, and thanks for all the good work you've done over the years for horse racing, and you continue in a role which is very important. I know the horse racing industry really appreciates everything you've done, again, not just for Kentucky, but for the sport in general. And thanks for joining us today on the TDN Writers Room podcast.
Thanks. My new slogan, guys, is saving horse racing one state at a time, or maybe 6 at a time. Who knows? Thanks for having me.
Okay, thanks, Damon.
Damon Thayer, our guest of the week, was brought to you by Gainesway. As we've told you, Gainesway is home to 4 new stallions in 2025, including Preakness winner Seize the Gray, Arrowgate's highest earning colt. Seize the Gray won not only the Preakness, but then he followed that up later in the year with the Pennsylvania Derby, which raised his career earnings to $2.4 million. And Seize the Gray, the My Racehorse-owned runner, now stands at Gainesway for a fee of $30,000. Gainesway, power, passion, performance.
Seize the Gray wins convincingly.
Seize the Gray. He's going to seize the day in the Pennsylvania Derby.
Seize the Gray is still there. Seize the Gray wins the Preakness.
In this week's edition of First Things First, I got up close and personal with the connections of a Tietlin. It's not often I get this close to trainer John Sheriffs, the trainer of the winner here at Elan. Congratulations, John. Take us through the trip with Hector. It's his 3rd win today, but it seems like he knows where the wire is.
Oh, he does, doesn't he? He's so great on the turf. He just has a real sense of the horse and what's going on in the race.
The O'Connors are in New York. We're fortunate enough for them to send horses out here to Southern California. If they're watching, what do you have to say to them, John?
All I can say is thank you very much. I really appreciate them sending the horses, and they're such nice horses. And JOC and Anasazi just love racing.
Talk about the San Luis Rey and its significance. This is a marquee race here at Santa Anita. What does it feel like to win it?
It's one of those dream races. It's like you say, it's a marquee race, and it's, you're coming down the hillside course and you're on the main track and you have to go around again. So, it's an exciting race.
John, thanks so much for the time and congratulations.
Thanks.
I'll get close just one more time. That's trainer John Sheriffs. Many thanks to trainer John Sheriffs, one of my most patient trainers, I may add. A terrific training job there by John as we move on and talk about Santa Anita in the upcoming week. This Friday will mark a pick 6 carryover. We got over $70,000 in the kitty. It goes off as race number 4. Pool is expected to exceed $500,000, so get handicapping as well. We'll head up to close out the classic meet next weekend with the Santa Anita Derby. All eyes will be on Santa Anita and the first racing tour. Do go to santanita.com for tickets. And guys, it's still time to sign up for the 5K, one of the most beautiful walks or runs through the Arboretum. Come on. I know you guys want to come. Randy, you could come and do it. Couldn't you?
No. If you ever see me running, Zoe, call the police. There's somebody behind me and probably armed.
All right. Well, let's now take a look at what's coming up this weekend. And first, we'll start at Gulfstream Park, where the Florida Derby, the Curlin Florida Derby presented by Hillendale, is the big race of the day and the big race of the meet. Sovereignty, coming off a win in the Fountain of Youth, is obviously the favorite. News broke yesterday or the day before that Junior Alvarado broke his shoulder blade, and they have named Manny Franco to fill in and be the new rider for him. Normally, I would discount a horse from the 10 post in this race, but we talked about that before the Fountain of Youth, how they've elongated the run up. Randy, how far is the run up now for this race?
The run up, I have no idea.
I thought wasn't it the same for the Fountain of Youth?
Well, it was they changed the run up for the mile and a 16th races at the Fountain of Youth so that they had a little bit of a longer run to the first turn. The mile and an eighth of the Florida Derby will have a different run up. Still won't be that much.
Okay.
But yeah.
But anyways, so Sovereignty, the way Bill Mott talked going into the Fountain of Youth, you've got to think the horse is going to move forward. You know, he said he'd be happy to be second or third. The horse wasn't really ready. The distance was too short, and he got the job done to win his second straight race after winning the Street Sense. If he comes out of this, he's going to be the one of the obvious favorites for the Kentucky Derby. I've got a wild wise guy pick, though. I'm going to go with Jimmy's Dailies.
Whoa.
We're looking for a big price in here. 2 starts back, he won a maiden race and beat Disruptor, who's in this field. Look what Disruptor did next time out for Todd Pletcher. Won a maiden special weight, getting a 9 1/4 winning margin and a 92 buyer. Then last time out, he lost to Pletcher again, going a mile and eighth to the highly regarded Grande. So he's a horse that has to step up. This is his first stakes win, but I just felt like being a little different in here. So I know that Sovereignty's the horse to beat, but I'm going to throw a few dollars on a wild long shot in here.
Yeah. So after the Jeff Ruby, in other words, you're now looking for horses that have no fig. Right. I mean, look, Sovereignty's got he's got Tappan Street, he's got Disruptor to run against Brad Cox and Todd Pletcher, but there's no reason not to think that Sovereignty won't take a nice step forward from the Fountain of Youth, and the Fountain of Youth was a really good race. To me, it was the short stretch that he overcame in that race at a mile and a 16th, and he was just getting warmed up when they crossed the wire and he blew past River Thames. So, I mean, Zoe, I think a mile and an eighth, second start of the year. I mean, I'm expecting him to be even better.
Me too. And I purposely have not watched any of his works because he's a horrible workhorse. I have heard, though, that his works have been a little bit better of late. So it seems like the light bulbs come on. I'm delighted to see Manny Franco getting the mount because he's a very savvy, smart rider. And he will have watched this horse's races. He will have likely been on him perhaps in the morning and knows that he's going to have to pedal him every step of the way. Excuse me, braking on the outside, he's obviously going to save ground going into the first turn. The only thing I kind of saw that he didn't like last time was too much kickback. So I think Manny's going to need to steer him clear at some point of the kickback, because when he really started running in the Fountain of Youth was once he got clear of the kickback and switched leads and just galloped down the lane. So Sovereignty, definitely the horse to beat in here. How about Bob running one?
Yeah, Matticat Road.
When was the last time he ran a horse in the Florida Derby? I don't know the answer. I'm just asking the question. It's been a while.
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, he's got a lot. Well, I can tell you exactly how long it's been in a second here. Go ahead and keep talking.
So Matticat Road gets the blinkers off. Tyler Gaffleone picking up for him. And when Bob takes the blinkers off a horse, he's not looking to take the horse back. He's just going to want him to relax a little bit better than he has relaxed. So just because the blinkers are coming off, and bear in mind, Bob's blinkers are tiny little cheetahs. So don't think that all of a sudden he's going to come blasting from off the pace, because he's not. I like the fact that Gaffleone gets aboard of him. So he's probably the most interesting horse in there. Obviously, Disruptor's going to take a lot of the money with Irad to ride for trainer Todd Pletcher. It's a good race. It is a good race without having a major standout as far as I'm concerned.
All right. This is courtesy of our friends at Equibase.
Great.
It hasn't really been that long. Baffert shipped Spielberg to run in the Florida Derby in 2021. Spielberg predictably finished 8th. That is the only horse that Bob Baffert has ever started in the Florida Derby.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. Was 21 during COVID as well?
The year after, pretty much over by this time in 2021.
Yeah. But yeah, it's been there in the fairgrounds. You don't often see Bob ship horses too.
So let's move on to the fillies. They'll go in the Gulfstream Park Oaks. This is, again, a race, no superstars, nobody that jumps off the page, but a very intriguing race with several horses that have chances if they can step up and kind of improve. I mean, what do you do with Cassiar, a first-time starter? As a first-time starter, he won at Tampa Bay Downs last time up. I got a nice 81 buyer figure, trained by Shug McGahee, and his promise was claimed by Carlos David and came back and won an optional claimer allowance, getting an 85 buyer. But I think most of the attention is going to go to 5G in here. And I think that's who I'm going to pick for George Weaver. She ran second last time out in the Honeybee. Prior start before that, and her first 2-turn dirt race, she won the Cash Run Stakes by 9 lengths at Gulfstream. And the Honeybee, I think, was a tougher, even though it was a grade 3, I think that field was a little bit tougher. Quiet Side is a very well-established horse. Muhima is another monster from the Brad Cox barn. So I'll go with 5G in there, but wouldn't be surprised if any one of about 5 or 6 horses won it.
It's going to be a good betting race. 5G, the only thing that would concern me is that she shipped to Oaklawn. She ran a hard race. It was her first race around 2 turns there at Oaklawn. And I thought she ran huge that day and lost nothing in defeat to Quiet Side. But it seems like shipping to Oaklawn, shipping back, and then running again, expected to run a big effort. I'm just questioning that. I don't question George Weaver hardly at all, but I'm just wondering if that might take a toll on a 3-year-old filly. The Queen's MG, obviously she's proven last time that she could get the mile distance. We'll see how she handles this 2-turn event. But the whole race doesn't really excite me. So why not Cassiar for Shug McGahee? She's bred all day long to get 2 turns.
Yeah. I like 5G mainly because she was stuck in just a horrific post position, post 13 out of 13 last time when she ran in the Honeybee Stakes. And Irad rode her that day. It's Tyler Gaffleon this time. But Irad rode her very aggressively out of the starting gate to try to get over ahead of the pack and save some ground from the 13 hole. So he was part of a pretty lively pace in there that helped set it up for Quiet Side. So I thought the race was better than it looked on paper. And now she's back at Gulfstream where she won the Cash Run before that by 9 lengths. So I think she's the horse to beat, but I mean, what price is she going to be?
And also on the Gulfstream card, not something we really need to debate because the horse is going to be 1-5 and probably won't lose. But the Ghost Gapper Stakes features White Aberio, who decided to run in this rather than go to Saudi Arabia, as the connections thought it would set him up better for the spring, summer, and early summer races like the Met Mile and the Whitney and whatnot. So I would think that he'll be a heavy favorite and likely win the Ghost Gapper Stakes.
Did you see that video of TNT, Charles Barkley? It's on X. It's hysterical. Ernie Johnson asked Charles Barkley a question, and he wasn't prepared at all. He wasn't prepared at all for anything to respond to that question, and it was comical. You need to watch it. I haven't even looked at the Ghost Zapper. That's where I'm going.
I mean, White Aberio should definitely win this race. Obviously, like you mentioned, it's a stepping stone. Thor will probably take a little bit of money. But again, not a terribly intriguing race. Hopefully everybody runs in there against him.
The TDN Writers Room brought to you by the PHBA, the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association, as we continue our look at Pennsylvania stallions, farm by farm. This week we go to Cabin Creek Farm, Gettysburg, to look at its 5 stallions. Let's start with Il Volano, the sire of 69% winners and 7% stakes winners from his starter's lifetime. Imposing. There's Imposing. He's the only son of gun runners standing outside of Kentucky, and he's out of the champion 3-year-old filly, Untappable. The Breeders' Cup winner, $4 million earner. Gun runner out of Untappable. That's imposing. Red Vine is the only son of Candy Ride in Pennsylvania. He's the sire of 72% winners from starters, and he's the Pennsylvania sire with the leading average earnings per runner, $14,350. And let's go next to Magic Spoon, an undefeated 2-year-old stakes winner. He's not 2-year-old now, but when he was a 2-year-old, he was an undefeated stakes winner by the up-and-coming sire, Good Magic. 4-time graded stakes winner on all 3 surfaces. Some like it hot brown. We'll see his first foals born this spring. Remember him with trainer Mike Maker. To learn more, take a look at the 2025 Stallion and Boarding Farm Directory online at pabred.com or call 610-444-1050.
PA Bred, I think we've built a brand at this point.
It's excitement at every step.
Roses for Deborah just set a new track record.
On average, for the past decade, Pennsylvania paid over $28 million a year in Breeders' Awards, restricted races, and owner bonuses. Plus, PA Bred shine on the world's biggest stage. Just 3 states have bred more Breeders' Cup winners. Learn more at pabred.com.
Be a smarter better with First TV, the best horses, with thousands of exclusive morning workouts, all at your fingertips and delivered right into your inbox. Everything you need to be informed. Be smart, bet smart with First TV.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by First TV. This week's work of the week is Phil D'Amato's Vodka with a Twist. Remember her? She's working towards her first start this year. The 5 furlong move in 102 and 4 was her 9th back work this year. The runner-up in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies was last seen running 3rd in the Grade 2 Starlet Stakes in December. She is preparing to make her 3-year-old debut in the Grade 2 Fasig-Tipton Oaks on April the 5th. That is her working with Public Assembly. She sat behind and finished up very nicely indeed.
Well, this weekend's racing includes more than just what's going on at Gulfstream. There's a huge card as well at the home of the Arkansas Derby, Oaklawn Park. The Arkansas Derby is the 13th race in the card, and we've been talking off air about a horse by the name of Cornucopian, who is very interesting horse. Is the 7-5 morning line favorite, has run only 1 time for Bob Baffert in a 6 furlong race, then got a 101 buyer. Now is having to stretch out to the mile and an eighth in the Arkansas Derby, draws the outside post. I tell you, this horse might be the second coming of whomever. He's going to be the favorite. I can't bet on this horse under those circumstances. I think, look, obviously Baffert knows what he's doing, but I think he's asking just too much of this horse, and that we may see a little bit of improvement down the road. Maybe he's more a Travers or Haskell kind of horse. But some interesting horses in here. And I wonder why Cold Battle never gets any respect. He was 11-1 last time out in the Rebel. You don't hear anybody talking about him coming into this race. But if I have to make a pick, it's going to be Sandman, who got beat by Cold Battle last time out. But I still look back at a Southwest Stakes where he ran a tremendous race to finish second after a horrible trip. Hopefully he will run back to that, Randy.
Yeah, I'm looking at the past performances right now of these horses, and Speed King has got a little bit of speed, as his name might suggest. But other than that, when you go through these horses, horse by horse by horse, very little early speed in this race. So that's going to play, I think, to the advantage of Cornucopia. And I agree with you. He's 7-5 in the morning line. It's awfully hard to take that kind of a price against a horse being asked to do what he's being asked to do. But we know the talent level is there. We know that from his career debut. Bob Baffert doesn't think the distance is going to be a problem for him. Zoe, you've seen him out there. What's your opinion of it?
He's a good horse, and you have to bear in mind the connections as well. SF and Starlight, not only do they want to win the Derby, they want to win any big prep around. So that really plays into the hand of this horse going there. Obviously, Arad will be riding in Florida this weekend, so they pick up Johnny V, who is Johnny on the spot when it comes to Bob. Bob's just got to call him. He knows what he's going to get with Johnny. He's obviously going to want this horse forwardly placed. He comes in with some very good works against some very good stable mates as well that he's outworked. So Cornucopian gets a good draw on the outside. And one thing about Bob with horses with speed, and one thing that he can trust in Johnny V, is if he says go to Johnny V, Johnny's going to go. He's not going to overthink things. So Cornucopian's in there. Obviously, you got Dwayne Lucas in there. You're going to get some speed with Nick Juarez riding that horse. He's probably the only opposition. Is he the California speed in there? I don't think so. Sorry, the leaf blower's going off. That's what's making the noise. It's raining outside, by the way, but we've still got leaf blowers here in Southern California. And who else was I going to talk about? Oh, yeah, of course, Colt Battle. What a cool horse. I hope he wins by 10.
So Lucas has won the Arkansas Derby twice, back-to-back. Althea in 1984 and Tank's Prospect.
Oh, my goodness.
In 1985. Now he's won. Wow. He's run 31 horses in all in the Arkansas Derby. This will be 32. But yeah, you got to go back 39 and 40 years.
And that's the barn he's in, Althea.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She was like. There's a lot of stories about Althea back in the day. I was actually covering her Arkansas Derby for a newspaper. That was amazing.
Can you talk about any of them, or is that not for publication anymore?
No, I can. Yeah. So it's 1984, and Althea runs in. I'll try to make this quick. She runs in the Fantasy Stakes against My Darling One, a filly trained by Laz Barrera. Althea was the champion 2-year-old filly. She goes to her nose at the start. She's a speed horse. She makes a big rushing move with P-Val along the rail on the backstretch, gets shut off, drops back to last. It's only like a 6 or 7 horse field. Circles the field, hooks up with My Darling One at the top of the stretch. They pull away head to head, like 10 or 12 lengths ahead of the rest of the field. My Darling One beats her at the wire, and the buyer figure comes back something like a 108, 109. After all that, unbelievable. And I go to Wayne's barn the next day to write something for one of the trade publications and said, because I knew Wayne back then even was pretty aggressive. And I said, any chance you'll run this filly back in a week in the Arkansas Derby? And he said, no. We're going to go to the Kentucky Oaks. So, okay. So I write in this publication, not going to run in the Arkansas Derby. So 2 or 3 days later, he enters her in the Arkansas Derby. I go back to the barn and I said, Wayne, why would you do that to me? Why I asked you, why would you tell me that? He said, I didn't want you guys hanging around the barn all week long. And what does she do in the Arkansas Derby? She goes wire to wire, and behind her is Gate Dancer. She wins by 7.
Wow.
And behind her is Gate Dancer, who obviously goes on to do what Gate Dancer went on to do. It was an unbelievable performance.
So in the Fantasy Stakes, which is the prep for the Kentucky Oaks at Oakland, Wayne Lucas has a horse in there by the name of Princess Elia. Very interesting, this relationship he's developed now with Nick Juarez, who's a terrific guy, by the way, but is certainly not somebody you normally think of as somebody who would be getting mounts in these big Grade 1 races. This is an interesting race as well. Quiet Side is the horse to beat, I think, after winning the Honeybee by a length. And that was a really loaded field that day. The horse had been a little bit of an enigma for trainer John Ortiz. Kept running well, but wasn't winning. I'm in the wise guy mood today. I'm actually going to pick Take Charge, My Lady. And she was awful in the Honeybee, beaten 32 lengths. When I see something like that from a good trainer where the horse gets beat 30, 40 lengths or is eased, it tells me that something happened and the trainer understands why, and that it's not going to happen again. It's going to run them right back. It says tight start traffic. She had a little bit of a problem at the start, but I don't think that had anything to do with how awful she was. So maybe Kenny McPeak can surprise him here with Take Charge, My Lady. But this is a good one. And Simply Joking also, too, deserves your respect. Has only run twice for Whit Beckman, but 2 for 2, and is coming into the Fantasy trying to get some points. Has 0 points for the Kentucky Oaks as we speak.
Well, Take Charge, My Lady, when you go back and you watch the replay of that race, she broke about a half a step slow. So you see this all the time leaving the gate. She lost her spot, and then the 2 horses on either side of her came over and squeezed her pretty badly, and she was back in last going into the first turn, which is not really the way that she wants to run. And when she didn't respond the way Leparoux wanted her to respond at about the 5/16 pole, he just threw out the anchor. And the length of the stretch, she was just being eased. So I think that race, I've got it written down as a complete throwout. So I'm expecting her to bounce back. Now, whether she'll bounce back to the level of Quiet Side and Simply Joking is another matter. Simply Joking was supposed to run against Good Cheer in the Rachel Alexandra, which is going to be a nice showdown, but she got sick and had to be scratched from that race, which is why she hasn't run since mid-January.
I like Simply Joking. I also like Quiet Side, and neither one of them is going to pay very much whatsoever at the windows. But I was delighted to see Quiet Side jump through in a big way. Maybe the light bulb's just gone on and she's going to figure things out, a better way to do it. But Simply Joking's a good filly. She's a really good filly for Whitback Month.
TDN Writers Room also brought to you by West Point Thoroughbreds. We have discussed the upcoming Arkansas Derby as it pertains to West Point. Bill likes Sandman. So does Terry Finley and West Point Thoroughbreds. Sandman, their horse. They're the co-owner. So the Arkansas Derby, $1.5 million. That's big, but even bigger are the points at stake. Sandman right now has 29 points. So third place finish might do it, probably will. So a 1-2-3 finish is what they're looking for Sandman, who will have a new jockey, Jose Ortiz, aboard in the Arkansas Derby for trainer Mark Cassidy. Sandman, the second choice on the morning line behind Cornucopian at odds of 3-1.
All the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
That's a wrap on this week's show. I want to thank my co-hosts Zoe Cadman and Randy Moss. And of course, Randy Moss, where would he be without Lucy, our mascot? She looks like she's having a great time and is actually moving around a little bit, Randy. Good for her. So anyways, want to thank that team. Also, Damon Thayer, the Gainesway Guest of the Week, as well as our producers and directors. That's Sue Finley, Anthony LaRocca, Aaliyah LaRocca, and Katie Petroniak. Well, again, once again, that's a wrap on this week's TDN Writers Room podcast. We'll see you next week.